Hello and welcome back to Good Learners. This is Safia Siddiqui, and the chapter that we're going to be talking about today is called Tribals, Decos and the Vision of a Golden Age. In this chapter, we will talk about the resistance of the tribal society against the British rule. Let's begin. So students, we start by talking about Birsa Munda. We're talking about the village of Chota Nagpur in Jharkhand, where people considered Birsa Munda as someone who had healing powers. He was looked upon as God, as someone who's going to save the people from the Decus. Now, who were the Decus? They were the outsiders. Now, these people were very unhappy with the changes that the British government brought in their lives. They feared that their livelihood, traditions, and religion would be under threat. And so, they started following Birsa Munda, who encouraged them to rebel. Now, the tribal societies had different customs and rituals which were very different from the Brahmanical customs. In fact, the tribal societies had different rituals between themselves too, and it was obviously under threat under the British Raj. Now students, let's shift from the rituals and see what the tribals did to sustain a living. So some of them practiced jhum cultivation. Now you all know that jhum cultivation is another word for shifting cultivation, where they burn the vegetation and leave the ash which acts as potash and later fertilizes the soil. They then move on to another land. The lives of these people depend on free movement within the forest for growing their crops. Now, the other set of people were hunters and gatherers. They saw forest as essential for survival. The Khonds, 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 were one such community who went out on collective hunts and then distributed the meat amongst themselves. Now, these communities had to exchange goods in order to get the supply of rice and grain. Some of them also did odd jobs to get the supply of rice and grain. Now, due to the buy and sell that started happening, the dependence on traders increased. Through this, the traders and money lenders got their access to the forest. And with their various techniques, they often left the tribals into loans and debts. Now, many tribal groups survived by herding and rearing animals. The Van Gujjars of Punjab Hills and the Labadis of Andhra Pradesh were cattle herders. The Gaddis of Kullu were shepherds, and Bakarwals of Kashmir reared goats. The other set of tribals took to settle cultivation instead of moving from place to place. The Mundas of Chota Nagpur was one such example. In their case, the whole clan owned the land and were rightful descendants of the land that they cultivated. The British officials saw the settled cultivators as more civilized than the tribals who moved around. So this is how different tribal groups sustained. However, with the advent of the British rule, there were very visible changes. Now let's see what they were. So the tribal chiefs held a very respectable position in the community. They had economic, administrative and territorial powers. But now, under the British rule, the functions and power of the chief changed. They basically lost their authority. The same thing was with the shifting cultivators too. The British officials were very uncomfortable with the jhum cultivators. According to them, settled cultivators were easier to control and administer, unlike the shifting cultivators. The British also wanted a regular revenue source, and the jhum cultivators did not serve the purpose. So finally, they introduced the land settlements. That is, they measured the lands and defined the rights of the owners and fixed revenue with it. With this, they wanted the jhum cultivators to settle down, but that failed too. There were protests all across the tribal communities, and so the British had to allow the shifting cultivators to carry on with jhum cultivation in some parts of the forest. Now, British extended their control over the forest and declared that forests were state property, and so jhum cultivators were now not allowed to roam freely in these forests. With this, a lot of cultivators were forced to move out to other areas in search of work and livelihood. But then, as cultivators started moving out, the officials now faced the problem of labor. They needed labor for construction of railway lines and to cut trees, so the colonial officials came up with a solution. They declared that they will give a small part of land to them to cultivate, but on the condition that they would have to provide labor to the forest department. but then there were widespread protests against this too. Now, during the 19th century, the traders and moneylenders found a way into these tribal societies, but it took the tribes some time to understand their intentions. Now, when we look at the silk wearers, for example, the colonial officials gave loan to these tribal people. They bought their silk cocoons for very less and sold it at a price 5 times higher than that. The silk growers earned very little out of this and eventually considered the traders their main enemies. The other set of jhum cultivators who went out in search for work also faced difficulties. They were employed in tea plantations, coal mines, and were paid very less and miserably. Soon, the tribals united and decided to rebel against the changes in laws and atrocities. Birsa Munda played an important role here. Now, Birsa was born in a poor family. From a young age, he was told stories of bravery and the golden past of the Munda tribe. Fighting for one's own land and freeing the land from the Dikus, who were the outsiders, was seen as important. Now, Birsa went to a local missionary school and also learned about Vaishnav practices. He held purity and piety as important. It is also said that his aim was to reform the tribal societies. He urged them to give up alcohol and stop believing in witchcraft and sorcery. Although he adopted these outside practices, he still considered the landlords, traders, and missionaries as a threat. Now, the British officials were worried as Birsa Munda's political movement aimed for establishing a Birsa Raj, which would be a threat to their rule. So, as the movement spread, the British officials decided to act. They arrested Birsa Munda in 1895. Then, when he was released 2 years later, in 1897, he started the movement again and gathered support. He used traditional symbols and languages to encourage people. The protest continued and the protesters attacked police stations and churches, which were symbols of the outsiders. They also raised the white flag as a symbol of the Birsa Raj. But eventually the movement faded out with Birsa's death in the year 1900. Now, although the movement faded, it holds a lot of importance as it forced the colonial government to introduce laws which did not pose a threat to the tribal society. Second, it also showed that the tribals had the capacity to protest against the atrocities and demand their own rights in their own symbolic way. Now, with this, we come to the end of the chapter. If you found the information useful, please like, share and comment on the video below and subscribe to Good Learners for more such videos.